I'm good. It's like this. This is a short and incomplete history of some performances that I did around 1983 to 1985, in which I did things to cause others to call me the Blood Boy. Tommy Turner's here. Tommy Turner used to yell, "Who's the fucking Blood Boy, man?"
Where's the Blood Boy?
Thank you. Whenever I performed. I'm glad Tommy's here. The following is all true except for the parts that I made up or embellished because I can't remember.
What'd you say, Blood Boy?
So feel free to tell me to slow down because this reading stuff is really crazy for me. Feel free to tell me to slow down or speed up or embellish.
Or shut the fuck up.
Yeah, or shut the fuck up. I probably won't, but I'm going to try not to go too long and not too short. It was a really good, I think it's a really good follow-up to the last, to Stefan's work because I think it's kind of along the same lines from a different direction. Chapter 1. I drove to New York City from Tallahassee in 1981 with a friend in a beat-up Ford Pinto with a large bag of psilocybin mushrooms in the trunk. Yes, I need that kind of stuff, please. I got it. At some point on the highway near Baltimore, the hood of the car flew up and cracked the windshield. We tied it down and continued on. I had a sublet for the summer in a loft that belonged to Sally Baines, a performance critic at the Village Voice. By that time, I had about 7 or 8 years of dance classes under my belt. 8 a.m. ballet classes daily with Maria de Baroncelli, while sweating out the previous night's alcohol or hallucinogenics in college. I had left the dance department at Florida State for many reasons. One was definitely the mushrooms, but another was that my interest in Hermann Nietzsche, Gunter Bruce, the Judson Church dancers, and my imitations of photos that I'd seen of Hijikata's Buto moves were not sitting well with my conservative-leaning dance teachers. On my arrival to the city, I put the drugs in the freezer and went in search of what I thought was the authentic underground. I wanted to find the people that were doing the things. I knew they were there. It was just a matter of introductions and sorting some stuff out. Fast forward the VHS tape a few years later. While rehearsing with an avant-garde dance troupe that I was part of, I met a girl and I fell in love. Then I met her boyfriend, Richard. Yeah, I shoot films. And so the story begins here in that insane graffiti-covered apartment on 13th Street. We hung out together for the next few years. Oh yeah, tell me to slow down if I go too fast too, please, because I have this tendency.
Just right.
Good bass, good bass.
Right. Fine. I like it now.
Good.
I mean,
Good. And so the story begins in that insane graffiti-covered apartment on 13th Street and Avenue A. We hung out together for the next few years, creating and indulging in various indulgences, and occasionally sleeping with each other's girlfriends. He cranked out these 8mm cinematic excesses out of cinematic excesses. Who wrote this?
Yeah.
These cinematic excesses out of his apartment with nothing more than clip-on lights, a paper backdrop, props and ropes and guns and knives.
like, is it hard that?
He showed the films in clubs or bars or lofts, wherever things like that could be shown at the time. He formed a loose group of actors, Tommy, one of them. He formed a loose group of actors and dancers. He formed cancer dancers. He formed a loose group of actors and dancers and junkies, and he made underground stars of them. At some point after a memorable trip to 42nd Street to see an Italian splatter film, I told him, "Let's shoot something where I cover myself with blood and scream." Right around then, we decided to do some live performances using the films as a backdrop. And then it really started. A burst of creativity in many ideas in the middle of what some people might call a downward spiral.
Yeah.
And here it gets hazy. Because there were many performances in many places, and a lot of them are lost. Lost here and now in my post-2020 nursing rat-posing dose ×3 COVID brain, as I try to write this down, and also at some point, At some point, a bunch of them on tape, on VHS tapes, were left in a backpack in the Gray's Papaya on 8th Street. I left about 10 years of performance on VHS tapes in a Gray's Papaya on 8th Street, and I realized it right away, and I ran right back, and they were already gone. So someone here has
Play
them.
drugs.
Anyway, almost all of them were documented by P.K. Kennis on a VHS recorder that he carried around on his shoulder, but really some of this is really kind of hazy. About the blood was cow's blood. It wasn't stage blood, and it wasn't maple syrup with red food coloring. It was always real, it was never fake. It was cow's blood. Bessie's blood, I called it. It came from a meat market on Avenue B and 13th Street, and it came in plastic pint containers. God knows why other people bought it, but I'm sure the guys, I'm sure the guys who worked there probably thought I was a vampire. 3 pints in a plastic bag and an empty bucket, and I was on my way to the night's adventures. I would line the stage of the Pyramid or Dorinka or the Wawa Hut or wherever it was with industrial garbage bags and duct tape. The blood stank. It stank when it dried, it reeked. Especially when the drag queens tracked it all through the club. One time the morning after the performance, the Pyramid called Richard at home and basically said, "You'll never work in this town again." I used it so many times at the Wawa Hut that it seeped under that tiny stage, and it probably stinks a little even to this day. I got used to the smell of it. Years later, traveling in India, I recognized it in the back of the Kali temples where they sacrificed goats. It dried on my face. Goats. They sacrificed ghosts. Goats. It dried on my face. It left a rash on my arms. Once I walked through the East Village covered in it after a performance in only Converse sneakers, a pair of old pants, and a bed sheet wrapped around me. People moved very quickly out of my way. On stage, the performances were hit and run. 2 to 5 minutes most. The films, a minimal plot or joke, loud sounds live on cassette or on a boombox, a clip-on caged orange work light that I still have today, the screaming, and the bucket. Sometimes I bathed in the blood slowly, using my hands like it was my home wash basin, like I was a lady and it was my home wash basin. Other times I poured a bucket of it over my head and collapsed into a screaming seizure. I held it in my mouth and expelled it on the walls or on paper or on people or on flowers or whatever else was in the reach of it. I slipped in it and fell. I swallowed it. I choked on it. In the end, I wiped everything up with the bed sheets, gathered up the garbage bags, and dumped it all somewhere. I tried to be nice when I was performing. And the dancing. Wild, fast, visceral, nude, naked, in the buff. In the womb or coming out of it, I was a screaming ape with sharp angles. All elbows and knees and leaps and fists and running and swinging and stomping and falling. A tantrum, a fit, possession. I was in my early 20s. I had a body that had training, and it did mostly what I told it to do, and I pushed it completely to the limits. I hissed, I spit, I raged. I literally climbed the walls. I rolled downstairs. I gnashed my teeth. I flew. I spun in circles on the floor like Curly from the Three Stooges. I hurt myself more than once and watched my own blood mixed with Bessie's blood. Marnie asked me what it was like to do it when I was writing this, the embodiment of it. The only thing I could think of is that it felt like
Hard and fast.
like this, or maybe felt like this. Felt like this.
Hard and fast.
Right? It felt like this.
Hard and fast. We work together, don't worry.
Richard, hanging me upside down at the Pyramid somehow. He cuts through my white dress shirt. Inside is a bag of pig guts that splashes over the bar. Again, Richard. Playing guitar, folk guitar, badly, sitting at the back bar at Danceteria for a long time. I rush in from the audience and I chop his hand off with an axe. The rubber hand lays on the bar squirting as we run out of the club. Me, singing a Joni Mitchell song to 2 skinned lambs' heads, purchased at the same meat market, before dousing both myself and them with the bucket. Richard, slitting open my arm in front of the doorman at 8BC with a prop knife we had prepared and the blood splashing. The doorman goes like... And that's how I met Carlo McCormick.
Not the other recording.
Marjorie and I roll naked, nude, in the buff, in 3 buckets of it at Richard's apartment for a film. Marjorie and myself and another guy who I asked to be in the performance only an hour before slip and slide in it at the Wawa Hut. He loses his balance and falls hard on his ass. He tries to get up and he falls again, and then a third time. We are all screaming to recorded screams, screaming on the cassette. I operate on a naked Tommy Turner on the stage of the Pyramid Club. I poke out Beth B's eye with a knife in Richard's apartment. I throw out joints to the audience during Nancy Reagan's war on drugs, shouting, "Just say yes! Just say yes!" In the original film, I just stand with my arms up,
This is your brain on drugs.
bright, red, and slimy slick from head to ass, and I scream and scream and scream and scream until I get so tired that I just open my mouth and pretend in silence. It all kind of ended one night at Dorinka on First Avenue. Props go to Gary Ray for even letting us in the door at that point. I was pretty messed up by that time, so all I remember is some kind of weird orgy party. Tommy might be able to help, I don't know, with this. Props go to Gary Ray for even letting us in the door at that point. I was pretty messed up by that time, so all I remember is some kind of weird orgy party involving mummified taxidermy cats hanging from the ceiling that Tommy had made, on-stage intravenous drug use, the bucket and the bathing, some of the lights shut out with a BB gun, and the crotch cut out of someone's pants with a knife. My above-ground dance world pretty much ended for me that night as well, because a group of producers from a well-known dance space showed up to watch. They had been thinking about presenting me, but oh man, did they rethink that. "You'll never work in this town again."
Arr.
Arr.
And it was on that night that I waved my ass goodbye to the dance world forever. And Lydia Lynch, she's here too. The Queen of Siam, the Queen of No Wave, the Queen of No! The influencer. Translating that transgressive mouth into more than 40 years of razor-cut fuck you in your face art. I don't know how you can go to the movies all the time, Brian, with all of those people. How can you eat food in a restaurant with all of those people around? Lydia's here too. Maybe she's the engine behind a lot of this. She was certainly driving a car, but she's way too big to talk about in this round. And I, as usual, have already talked too long. We'll leave that for the next time. Maybe I'll get invited back. You'll never do a reading in this club again. Jesus Christ, 40 years in New York City, and I wasn't ever really in a proper band, and I've never done a reading before.
You can be my band.
Don't let her read this town again.
So, last chapter, So, here we are, back in the here and now. The ape is older, and his hair is gray. And sometimes the body doesn't listen anymore. What am I now? The blood man? The blood geezer? Richard told me this week that MoMA had just bought an original photo print from him. It's probably not the first time, as he's grown into being a really amazing photographer. But this print is one of Marjorie and me covered in blood. We look like grimacing little babies in a red bath. We also look like we're having a hell of a lot of fun. So there's that. It was a hell of a lot of fun, and I damn well had a good time. I thought at the time I was an angry young god, but really now it just makes me laugh when I think about it. If I ever convert the leftover not lost VHS tapes that I have sitting on the bookshelf for years at home, it would probably make you laugh too if you saw it, especially you guys. I like to think that I may not always have hit the target, but at least I fired the shotgun. And now I have to clean up the stage and wrap this bloody bed sheet over my head and start walking home, so thank you.